Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I've been asked to speak about first to review some of the major trends in employment over the medium to long term in Australia, to reflect on some of the challenges for employment heading into the future, and thirdly, to outline a few broad themes for action, building on the Australian Government's Future Jobs Forum, which was held in early October. Australia's labour market has changed enormously over the past few decades, and it won't surprise you to know we will expect changes to continue as the 21st century unfolds. One of the long-term shifts has been an improvement in the employment rate from around 60% of the population over 15 years of age in the early 70s to a record high of 63% in 2008. Recessions in that period saw the employment rate decline to around 55% before a strong increase occurred through the 90s and 2000s. Underpinning the rise in employment rate has been a large increase in participation among women and full-time students. Female labour force participation has increased by around half since the mid-70s to 60%. The growth in the female participation rate is the result of several factors. First, the divorce rate has increased over recent decades, resulting in single women and mothers returning to the labour force to earn income for themselves and their family. In addition, the availability of childcare has increased, enabling women to return to the workforce sooner after having a child. Importantly, there's also been greater flexibility in the labour market over time, with the emergence of part-time and casual employment allowing a greater number of women the opportunity to balance family and work life. Social attitudes and gender roles, of course, have also changed dramatically, particularly over the 70s and 80s. However, male labour force participation, as this graph shows, has declined a little over the time period in which the share of women in paid employment has increased, reflecting some of the structural changes that I will come to shortly. Another major change has been the greater flexibility in working hours. For example, the part-time, largely casual share of employment has doubled since the 70s, from 15% in 1978 to 30% recently, and more people are working outside traditional hours. Associated with these developments are more flexible forms of work organisation, such as self-employment, contract or project-based work. Workers have also become more mobile between employers, occupations and industries. The growth in casual and other non-traditional forms of work is the subject of debate in the community. However, these forms of work in departments analysis often act as important stepping stones to permanent employment, and research has found that casual workers have similar job satisfaction to that of other categories of employees. The availability of diverse and flexible work arrangements can also make it easier for people who are marginally attached to the labour force to enter employment, including mothers with young children and mature age workers. One of the most marked changes over the last decade has been the shift towards a wide range of service industries. As a result, the share of workers in production industries, that is manufacturing, agriculture and mining, has declined from 24% in 1984 to 13% currently. Associated with this, the workforce and its jobs have become more highly skilled. Between 1982 and 2010, the proportion of the working age population with a vocational or higher qualification increased from 32 to 56%. Blue-collar employment has declined from around 55% in 1966 to 30%. In the last 5 years, around half the jobs created have been in highly skilled occupations, while only 9% did not require a post-school qualification. The growth in educational attainment has had important economic and social benefits, as people with higher levels of education are more likely to participate in the workforce and achieve higher incomes, and also tend to have better health throughout their lives. As these trends in the world of work have emerged over the past few decades, the national unemployment rate has varied widely, from around 2% in the 50s, 60s and early 70s to a peak of 11% in the early 90s and back down to 4% in 2007, prior to the recent global financial crisis. Some groups in the labour market continue to experience higher rates of unemployment. They include youth, Indigenous people and people with a disability. As a result, the number of long-term and very long-term unemployed people has been increasing since late 2008 to around 55,000 and 61,000 people respectively. In summary, with the exception of the variations in the unemployment rate, what is striking is the consistency of many of the trends over the past decades, especially the shift towards service sector employment and more skilled occupations. However, other features have continued, including a wide variation in unemployment rates by region and demographic group, despite strong periods of economic growth and targeted policy interventions aimed at easing the degree of disadvantage. Provided the macroeconomic environment remains sound, we can expect some of the trends to continue for some time. For example, unemployed rates edging lower, possibly more self-employment and mobility, and a continued shift towards skilled employment and the service industries. Complicating this outlook will be the demographic challenges which many of you would be familiar, such as the projection made in the most recent intergenerational report that the participation rate will fall from around 65% today to less than 61% in 2050. Drawing on this sketch of major trends, I'll reflect on some of the challenges and opportunities for employment heading into the future. The first challenge I'd like to raise is the pursuit of full employment. Full employment appeared as a policy objective in the white paper Full Employment in Australia in 1945 and the Reserve Bank Act 1959, at times when the unemployment rate was consistently around 2%. Since then, unemployment has risen over several economic cycles to peak at 11% in the 90s before falling to just over 4% in 2007. Australia's unemployment rate is currently around 5.25%, which is low for the past 30 years and by current international standards. The labour market has absorbed a significant increase in labour supply and provided a larger proportion of the population with paid employment compared to the level in the 60s. Nevertheless, there are various indications of significant spare capacity in the workforce, with 630,000 people unemployed in Australia, 840,000 underemployed, and a large number who have disengaged from actively looking for work. Some economists consider it is difficult to maintain the unemployment rate below 5% without fueling inflation to unsustainable rates. However, several OECD nations have maintained lower unemployment rates than Australia, along with high productivity, high participation and manageable rates of inflation. We can improve our ability to sustain unemployment at lower rates without generating inflation through better productivity growth, moderate income claims and better matching of individuals with the skill sets in demand by employers. With already low unemployment, achieving further gains will require us to look at the characteristics of the unemployed and the underemployed, their skills and barriers to employment, and how we can best achieve their inclusion in the workforce. It also requires us to look at the job opportunities that are available in terms of known vacancies and shortages and the industries and occupations that might be well positioned for more intensive job creation. This also opens up questions around the role of employers, including social enterprises, in terms of the role they can play in providing the opportunities needed to achieve full employment and greater social inclusion. That brings me to the second challenge, taking advantage of the opportunities that can emerge through change. A feature of Australian employment over the past few decades has been the major change in the industrial and occupational composition of employment. As I mentioned earlier, the services industries in general have grown rapidly, while employment in primary industry and manufacturing has declined in relative terms. These trends are expected to continue, with other nations, including less developed countries, experiencing similar shifts towards higher skilled and service sector jobs. My department projects that these broad trends in employment by industry will continue over the 5 years to 2015-16. For instance, the healthcare and social assistance, construction, professional scientific and technical services and education and training industries are expected to provide around 60% of all new jobs created to 2015-16. Mining employment is projected to increase by around 70,000 or 6% per annum in the 5 years to 2015-16. The strongest growth in percentage terms over this period. However, mining will continue to account for a relatively small share of total employment. The Department's projections for employment by occupation also indicate strong growth in the number of carers and aides, health professionals, tradespeople and education professionals. The majority of the 1.3 million additional jobs created over the next 5 years will be in highly skilled occupations. Past changes in technology have resulted in many entirely new categories of skilled occupations and raised the skills levels needed in many long-standing jobs. While looking further into the future is obviously speculative, we have a good guide from recent trends as to where the broad structure of the labour market is heading and can expect that demand for skills will continue to increase. Some of the major factors going forward include the pace and form of technological change, how our labour markets adjust to ageing population, the pace at which the balance of global economic activity shifts towards Asia, and how well Australians engage with these processes. The downside risks for Australian labour market in the short term are the uncertainty surrounding the European economies, but also a failure to engage with broader developments such as ensuring that our education system is aligned with labour market demands. To take advantage of opportunities to increase productivity, we need to see resources move to where they are most productive, as productivity varies considerably by industry and occupation. Overall, Australia's productivity levels are generally around the OECD average, at present at 86% of the level in the US economy, with the gap between productivity in Australia and the US widening in recent years. To lift productivity, we need a range of strategies, including taking greater advantage of information and communication technologies, improving the commercialisation of science and technology, continuing the upskilling of our workforce, and improving workforce and workplace performance. The third challenge I'd like to discuss is managing risk and building resilience. Economies are continually hit by unexpected events, many of which are readily absorbed and have little noticeable effect on the workforce, but others, such as a recession or the closure of a significant employer, can have major effects. There are a number of demographic groups who are particularly vulnerable to changes in the labour market. These groups typically have low educational training, which we can extend to include weak language, literacy, numeracy and problem-solving skills. These factors are becoming increasingly important as employment is weighted towards more skilled occupations. Other risk factors include limited work experience or occupational mobility. Similar risk factors can be identified for regions and industries. An illustration can be given in unemployment rates for people with different levels of educational attainment. Lower skilled people are more likely to experience unemployment in a weak labour market, whereas those with higher skills tend to maintain a low unemployment rate through the economic cycle. Addressing factors such as weak skills and the diversity of regional economic bases can improve the capacity of people to secure work in the first instance and also to be more productive and adaptive to change. The ability to move between occupations and employers over the course of a working life and maintain employability through lifelong learning can also help to manage risk. Unemployment rates vary widely across Australia. Some regions continue to have low unemployment through recessions, while other regions continue to experience high unemployment. For example, Wide Bay, Burnett, north of Brisbane, currently has an 11% unemployment rate, while the rate in central Perth is 2.5%. High-performing, sustainable and resilient regions tend to be those with good levels of education and skills, a diverse economic base, connections with regional, national and international markets, knowledge of their comparative advantage and a culture of innovation with support from local leaders. Labour mobility is an important strategy for managing risk and taking opportunities in the labour market. Mobility can take many forms between workplaces, tasks, occupations, industries and locations. The more options a person or region has, the less exposed they will be to risk and unemployment. In some respects, Australia's workforce has become more mobile over the past few decades. Around 1 in 6 workers, or almost 2 million people, start with a new employer in a typical year, with 400,000 of these workers also changing their industry or occupation. However, many people are resistant to mobility, and this is especially the case among the lower skilled. For this and other reasons, migration can have a valuable role in filling skills shortages at the national and regional levels. Looking into the future, it is likely that labour mobility will become increasingly important to the Australian economy. As a result, it's important the education and training system prepares workers to move between jobs, and that the other factors which act as barriers to individuals changing jobs or moving between regions to take up employment are addressed to the extent possible. So how can Australia shape the evolution of its labour market over the short to longer term, given some of the trends, challenges and opportunities outlined? I've touched on some of the strategies, however there are some broader themes for action that can be identified. The Australian Government held a Future Jobs Forum in October as an opportunity to take stock of factors affecting parts of the economy and employment, what the future environment might look like and how we can address the challenges and opportunities that are emerging. Government policies across a wide range of portfolios affect job creation. These policies are too numerous to mention here, but in general they can be described as providing a sound macroeconomic environment and delivering well-designed microeconomic policy settings. I've just mentioned some strategies my department has been pursuing to achieve some of the objectives mentioned earlier. The first one is planning and investing for jobs of the future. Individuals, businesses and communities should be giving thought, if they're not already, to the challenges and opportunities that might face them in the future. How to invest in the skills and other capabilities that are needed to perform well, and to attract and retain skilled people. Much of my department's work is around supporting industries and regions to address their skill shortages, adjust to major change in the workforce, or to consider their future workforce needs. The earlier that these preparations and investments are made, the better people can adjust and take advantage of opportunities. The government has introduced a network of local employment coordinators and regional education, skills and job coordinators, in part to assist stakeholders in regional workforce planning. Similarly, the new National Workforce and Productivity Agency will be assisting industries to look more holistically at their workforce development. The government has also introduced something called Skills Connect, which is aimed to assist employers navigate the training system, with the National Workforce Development Fund, an example where government is co-investing in workforce development with employers and bringing local stakeholders together. Reforms to the tertiary education sector will also help to address skills needs in the longer term by increasing the number of Australians with higher level qualifications and improving the ability of the sector to meet the needs of the labour market. Related to this is the strategy of building resilience and flexibility at the local level. This is achieved by raising skills levels, diversifying the economic base and supporting lifelong learning. Job Services Australia, disability employment services and related programs are central to building this resilience, especially among disadvantaged job seekers. The government's Building Australia's Workforce package from the 2011-12 budget has a range of initiatives aimed at improving employment of some of the most disadvantaged Australians in some of the most disadvantaged localities. The government is also supporting the mobility of job seekers through initiatives such as connecting people with jobs. Combined, these initiatives aim to ensure people facing labour market disadvantage are not left behind and they receive tailored support to obtain and maintain suitable work. Thirdly, making the connection through partnerships and networks. Strong partnerships are needed between employers, education and training organisations and employment services providers supported by government. This will help align efforts in workforce development and create local solutions. The Australian Government is encouraging collaboration through the Prime Minister's Task Force on Manufacturing and the National Resource Sector Workforce Strategy. Industry and community-led approaches are necessary to achieve sustainable results. Remote areas of Australia face different sets of labour market challenges and opportunities, and the reforms being considered in relation to remote area servicing involve close collaboration between stakeholders to best address the challenges facing these locations. The final two themes are increasing productivity and identifying and seizing opportunities. Australia has the potential to increase its productivity levels to be closer to those of the best performing advanced economies. While productivity and market opportunities are a focus for other departments we work with, better skilled, higher performing workplaces and better functioning labour markets are essential for achieving higher productivity and enabling opportunities to be taken. In conclusion, our goal is a well-educated, suitably skilled, productive society which is adaptable to change, with individuals highly engaged at the community and economic level and a high level of well-being. Australia is at an exciting stage in its development. We have generally low unemployment, a growing skills and education base, high participation in the workforce and growing incomes. These are features many other economies are struggling to achieve and protect at this time. At the same time, there are aspects of our labour market performance we need to continue to give strong attention to. The exciting part is we have the opportunity and capability to invest in a more inclusive, productive and resilient community. We can each take a step to help achieve that progress. Thank you for your time and for this debate on the future of work in Australia.